Welcome to the RightScale, IBM, and Zend webinar on development and test in the cloud. We have an exciting webinar ready to go for you, but beforehand we're going to just execute a couple of polls. It helps us calibrate the conversation. So we're pulling up the first one right now. So this just says, are you using the cloud today? And what we mean by the cloud is, are you using an infrastructure as a service cloud like Amazon or Rackspace? Okay, so it looks like we've got some people that are using it, but some people that aren't. And the topic of today's conversation is a great topic to talk about actually starting to use the cloud with test and dev. So let's execute the second poll. Okay, this is if you're using the cloud, are you using it for dev and test? Great, so it looks almost the same profile, so still a fair amount of people not using it for dev and test, and a fair amount, yes, for quite some time now, so that's pretty exciting. So we've got about 50% of the audience either beginning or actually using the cloud. So we've got the one more poll to go, and then we'll be done with this. What are you looking for in a dev and test cloud-based solution? So check all the ones that you are interested in: increasing access to resources, ability to create consistent testing environments, improve collaboration, or deliver faster results to customers. And those could be internal customers or external customers. Okay, so deliver faster results to customers is the winner there, and it's clearly what we hear from our customer base, but also just trying to get to resources, create consistent testing environments, and improve collaboration, all tied. So with that, let me get the webinar started. Okay, here's who we have. I am Betsy Zakakis. I'm a Vice President at RightScale, and I'm the one talking. Yuri's sitting next to me. He's an evangelist at RightScale. And with us, we have Kent Mitchell, who's Director of Product Management at Zend, and Leon Katz-Nelson from IBM. So we're very excited to have two of our partners today. And then answering all your questions, we hope that you will enter the questions just as the presentation goes through. Don't wait until the end. Anything that you think of, just key into the question tab, and either Matt Small, one of our account managers, or Rob Ahuja from IBM will answer your questions. We'll also hopefully have some time at the very end where we'll do some live Q&A. So we'll take the questions that you've been asking all along and go through some of those and have a discussion amongst all of the presenters in a live format at the very end. Here's our agenda. We're going to talk a little bit at the beginning about sort of why dev and test in the cloud, what we're seeing in terms of big drivers to push people toward the cloud, and then we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the development and test solution pack that we have just finished putting together at RightScale. Yuri's going to actually do the demo, show you how easy it is to launch servers in the cloud, and then IBM and Zend will each talk about their pieces of this solution pack. So we do have a pretty packed agenda, and then, as I said, we will do some live Q&A. Usually if the presentation goes all the way until the end of the hour, then we will just continue on for the next 15 minutes or so and just answer some questions. Okay? So let's get started. Kent, I think you're going to talk to us about market forces.
Yeah, hi everybody. So what we're seeing in the market, which I think is driving a lot of the adoption, or people starting to look to cloud, is everybody's under sort of pressure to shorten release cycles. People want applications done quicker, they want them out there, they want to update them more quickly, and this is just sort of the universal pressure that almost every development organization is under. As a result, a lot of companies are moving to more agile processes or trying to streamline their development process. And what you see is there's a lot of development cycles going on, there's a lot of continuous integration going on. All of these things require more machines to handle the load. Developers need sometimes multiple different versions of the same software, like they're developing version 1 or doing maintenance on version 1 while they're quickly developing version 2. And continuous integration needs machines to be running those kinds of tests, and then when it transitions over to the QA and testing side, they're running a lot more cycles. They're being asked to test multiple versions at the same time, so they need more machine resources. And so this compression of the life cycle means that more things have to be done in parallel, and that means that there needs to be more machine resources, and I think that's one of the things, the key things that's driving stuff towards the cloud. Some of the things that come out of that are related is when you have geographically distributed workforces, now you start to run into problems where you need consistency between the development, test, and production environments, so that you don't get developers working on one system that's different than the one that's ultimately being in production. And you need simple mechanisms to handle deployment. You can't have every developer trying to add in his own mechanism for how we're going to deploy the application. So these are the forces that are really driving this whole set of market changes that we're seeing that are interesting for the cloud. So now I'll pass it back over to Betsy, who's going to talk a little bit about what she's seeing in Lifecycle.
Yeah, we did a fair amount of research as we were putting together the solution pack, and here are some of the common challenges that we heard. And I think one of the really surprising things is they were common across company sizes and across industries. So first, no one had enough resources. The developers and architects didn't have resources that they wanted to have in order to experiment with new technologies or alternative architectures. The testing group felt like they didn't have enough resources to do adequate testing. And then the result of all that, in many cases, is that resources were shared. So it meant that they were provisioned, deprovisioned for each task and each project. To get new equipment, we heard on average it takes 3 to 5 weeks to procure it and provision it through IT. And then maintaining environments is just a persistent problem as code traveled through the life cycle. Of course, environmental configuration information travels with it, and changes that are made to that information in later stages rarely make it back into the earlier stages. So what our customers and prospects found is that the same issues were getting reintroduced because those configurations weren't changed earlier in the cycle. And then no one had just one environment that they were managing. There were multiple streams of code, multiple products, multiple target production environments. Once a piece of software hit production, if there were errors, then old or prior configurations need to be recreated. So there was a fair amount of time just spent managing the configuration information. And then, of course, all of that, as soon as you distribute your workforce geographically, was just exacerbated. And I think, Leon, maybe you can talk about distributed teams, and then I will move the slides ahead for you to talk about why cloud.
Right. So what we see is all of our enterprise customers, with very few exceptions, do have teams that are distributed throughout the world. It's no secret that companies that are larger have employed outsourcing very effectively. So it's quite often you will find a distributed team in places like Ireland or India, maybe Vietnam, Philippines, Russia, and so on. Really really exploiting the resources around the world, and having an ability to do agile deployment and through those distributed teams is a very much sought after capability, and people are really looking to the cloud as a way of delivering on that need.
Great. Okay, Leon, you can talk about why cloud? Well, it sounds like Leon's having some audio problems. So Leon, feel free to pitch in. I will try to do the best job I can with your slide here. I think that we, at RightScale, this graphic here represents a survey that we did recently.
People are looking to see, and trying to analyze by going to their customers what are the solutions that the people most likely to deploy on the cloud to get their return on investment as quick as possible. And what we find that in most cases, in most of these surveys, analysts, prognostications, test and development comes up on top. So you'll see the chart on this slide that illustrates that. So this is actually a RightScale investigation and survey that's producing these results. But we've seen very similar results from IBM's own surveys as well as what we get from consultants. And one of the things that comes loud and clear is people are looking to do development and test, but what the reason they're looking to development and test is probably more interesting than the workload itself, is the number one reason it comes across is agility. When it comes to development and test, those are very cyclical activities, or sometimes we call them seasonal. And that means you go through peaks and valleys of resource requirements, and with a very big gap in between the valleys and the peaks. And most organizations are challenged with finding or being able to finance and pay for the right amount of resources for the peaks. And most are actually sacrificing their ability to do proper test and development because there simply is not an unlimited amount of resources available. At the same time, if you are able to fund a sufficient level of resources for development and test, we will find that when there are valleys, those resources are sitting unused. So to kind of summarize some of the research we've seen is all indications point to enterprise customers dedicating anywhere between 30 to 50% of their capital, basically their hardware infrastructure, to development and test activities. That's that's as much as half of all your resources. And the second part that we have seen is that the utilization of those resources is very low. Typically, it's below 10%, and more likely than not, it's going to be in the range of 2 to 3%. So those two factors are really the big driving driving points behind people focusing on development and test as the first activity they look for the cloud. Then there's the another aspect which is very important is there's still a lot of hesitation, especially on the part of larger enterprises which have significant investment and requirements in compliance and security. They are somewhat hesitant to engage on the cloud for production systems. However, when it comes to development and test, that hesitation by and large goes away, because when it comes to development and test, the best practices that that all of the enterprise or best run enterprises have deployed is to segment the data and not use all of the production data in development and test. And second is actually not to use the real production data in development and test, but rather to mask the sensitive data out of it. So while you are still preserving the semantic integrity of this data, so it looks like it's real data you're testing with, you are not exposing any of the private and sensitive information about your clients and customers to more people than they need to know. So Betsy, I'll pass the baton back to you.
Okay, great. So we're going to focus the rest of this webinar on how you can use a RightScale managed cloud to tap into the virtually unlimited resources available on the cloud, provision those resources, and maintain configuration control through the entire development lifecycle. But before we get into all the specifics, let's just think about the benefits. If you have more resources, your teams can be more creative. They can test out new architectures, as I talked about earlier. They could prototype new product ideas. If QA has more resources, of course, they can improve the quality of the product, creating less rework by finding problems earlier. But if you push it one more step forward, if you have a lot of resources, you could actually break up the testing process and run some of it in parallel, reducing the time to market. You could maybe set up an environment for end-user testing, acceptance testing, so you don't have to stop while those users go try out the new features. So there are a lot of things that you can do if you have just more resources to streamline the process and create a faster time to customer, whether those customers are inside your organization or out. It also improves utilization of the people, because people aren't waiting or reconfiguring, utilization of the equipment, because you don't have the lulls, equipment sitting around without being used. Of course, on the cloud, you just turn it off. And utilization of capital. So with that, let's sort of dive in a little bit. Using the Dev and Test solution pack, we've made it really easy to access available servers on the cloud and provision those servers. Developers and testers can go through a self-service portal. It's a much easier to use user interface to launch multiple kinds of environments out on the cloud. They can launch an all-in-one server, which has the entire stack on one server, and this is typically used for integration testing. Or if they need to do more complex development or more complex testing, they can launch a multi-tier, multi-server architecture. And then, of course, once they're finished, they simply shut them down. You're not paying for resources you're not using. There's a lot of agility in being able to get them up fast and then shut them down. But one of the really great things about using RightScale earlier in the cycle is that by the time that software rolls into production, your operations teams can use the very same cloud management platform to monitor, manage, automate these production systems. We run on infrastructure as a service cloud providers, so the operations staff has complete control over the internal underlying infrastructure. So for example, unlike some PaaS environments, they can control how an application scales, how the app servers scale, how the database scales, either vertically or horizontally. They can control how the data is backed up. It's much easier to troubleshoot if you can actually see into the infrastructure. So RightScale can take you all the way from dev and test through production. And in that cycle, we help maintain consistent and reproducible environments. RightScale is built on what we call server templates. A server template defines what gets loaded onto a server and how that server behaves. The server templates are built from scripts, and then server templates are put together to create what we call deployments or multi-server, more complex architectures. So everything is very modular. It's easy to take base components, unpackage them, and repackage them to create exactly the configuration you need at each cycle, at each stage in the life cycle. Server templates and the scripts are all version controlled, so any changes are very easily replicated across the entire cycle. And these deployments that describe larger environments can be cloned and archived, so it's easy to reproduce past environments. I'm going to go through two slides that kind of give you a conceptual picture of what some of this looks like, and then Yuri's actually going to show you all of this. But the server templates that we use are, as I said, built from scripts. So we have a base machine image, and our best practices are to keep that machine image very small. Just use it to load the operating system and RightLink. RightLink is a lightweight agent that we use. It helps us communicate with the server. Then you load on scripts, and scripts can be run at boot time. Those are usually to install software. They can be run at any point when the server is operational, and some of those are used maybe to back up a database or promote a slave to a master or clear out caches. And then finally we have scripts that are run as the server is decommissioned to ensure that we have a graceful shutdown and all of the data that needs to be preserved is actually stored away. These server templates then can be unbundled into the scripts can be reused, and the server templates can be reused in different deployments. So usually what happens at the beginning of a cycle is an architect or a designer creates a reference architecture. That reference architecture can be instantiated in scripts and server templates and deployments. We have a whole library of scripts and server templates and macros ready to go that you can leverage or you can create your own. And here what we see is an example of starting with a one server template architecture to launch for development and all in one server. And it loads the operating system. It has scripts that then load the database and the app server. As you need more complex environments, those can be separated out onto different servers, moved into different server templates. And then as you move into staging and production, you can use those same server templates. For example, the database server template can be used to launch a master database or a slave database. An app server can be used to launch a standalone app server or an app server that's part of a scalable array. So I hope this gives you a picture of how easy it is to unpackage and repackage these components. And as I said, all of the scripts and server templates are version controlled, and all of the deployments can be cloned and archived. Here's how it all fits together in the solution pack. So the solution pack comes with a self-service portal that's very easy for developers and testers to use. It also comes with our full dashboard, and the full dashboard has been designed for a systems administrator or someone from DevOps. And then it comes with a library with 2 pre-configured environments for each PHP, Java, Rails, and .NET. So one of the macros launches an all-in-one server, and the other launches a multi-tier, multi-server environment. So the way you would use this is your DevOps person or a systems administrator would go through the full dashboard and import into your own account these environments, customize them, make sure that each version of the stack or each server that's launched has exactly the right version of the software. If you need to put anything on there for security or regulatory issues, you can add that into your environment, and then the administrator or DevOps person shares them with the development and test self-service portal. So developers and testers then only see approved configurations. Those are launched in the cloud and used by the developers. It can all be integrated with whatever development environment systems you're using today. So if you have SVN or GitHub for your source control, if you use continuous integration testing or regression testing, those can live in your data center or those can live out on the cloud. We can put all of this into a VPC that can only be accessed through a VPN if you're worried about intellectual property. And then finally, before Yuri's itching to go here, before he does the demo, we do have a big vision for this solution pack. We launched a couple weeks ago with Zend and IBM, and we are excited to have them on the webinar today as partners, and they'll talk a little bit more about what they're delivering as part of the solution pack. But we're working with a number of IDE vendors to be able to launch straight from the IDE servers in the cloud, as well as working with a number of test applications so that once you have your applications up on the cloud, it will be very easy to leverage some external or third-party testing tools. So with that, Yuri, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Betsy. So let me drag my web browser here into the screen. So RightScale, I'm actually going to take some of the themes and the use cases rather, that Betsy was explaining and show a demonstration of how you actually put those into practice. So what you're looking at here is my web browser, because RightScale is software that gets delivered as a service. So compare it to, say, Salesforce. You're using that to manage your customer list and maybe your sales funnel. RightScale used to manage servers that you deploy in the cloud. Betsy was talking a little bit about the idea of a self-service portal, of an IT department being able to create approved configurations for dev servers or staging testing servers that then can be easily launched. So the idea is that for developers, they no longer need to go to IT to ask for a machine they can self-provision. And that's the first thing that I'm going to show you and what we're looking at here. For simplicity, I took everything else out of this account and show you just the ability to launch a single type of server with a pre-configured set of applications already in there. Happens to be a really straightforward LAMP server. In a more regular work account, you would see all the different servers listed here that this particular IT department makes available for their developers. What I want to show you is really how quickly you can launch a particular machine. I'm going to click here on the launch button, and I just confirm that in fact I do want to launch a server. And because I couldn't have a lot of people launching a lot of different servers here, what I do is I add my initials into this machine so I can easily spot it later on. Not an issue on this one because I just have myself using it and I just have the single server, but we make allowances there for having larger teams and sometimes even distributed teams. So just as I was speaking, we've actually provisioned the machine. I'm going to click here, OK. What we've done is we've actually sent an API call to Amazon in this case to stand up a server, and as that virtual instance becomes available, we're installing and configuring the applications just as this particular IT department set it up to be, this LAMP all-in-one server. Now, it is rather fast. It only takes about 3 minutes to instantiate a virtual server, but we have a lot of people here on the webinar, and we don't really just want to wait around for this thing to launch. So cooking show style, I already have one baking in the oven that I can show you running right now. So I'm actually logging out, and I'm going to log into a separate account. And I have a server running there where I can show you a couple more things that are really useful. Now on this other account, notice now I have a lot of deployments. As Betsy was explaining, we can put servers into deployments to organize and to give different people different levels of access. I have lots of different ones here. I even have visibility into, let me scroll to the top here, what things are costing at the current run rate. The colored dots shows me what's running and what isn't. If I'm not using a particular machine, it doesn't make sense for me to be paying the hourly rate to run that. That's what you see mostly here in red. Now this is the one I want to show you right now. When I click on the name of the deployment, I get to an information page for this deployment specifically. Now this could have been a 3-tier architecture with the load balancer, the app servers, the databases. Again, for simplicity, I'm keeping it very modest to just a single machine. When I click on the name of the server here, I travel to an information page with all the particulars for this machine that I would want to know, including its public-facing DNS name. So I can very quickly hit port 80 to see what application is running here. And that's what I just did. I just clicked on that. So I'm loading the page that this website is generating. It's just a very simple Drupal demo that I have here. So in this hypothetical example, I now want to show you how easily and quickly I can update this, let's call this image here, just changing an object in the program via the integration with an ID environment and some of the automation capabilities related to operational scripts that Betsy was mentioning. So let's say that I recognize, this is not the image that I want here. What I'm really looking for is this image. I want to put the RightScale logo there instead. So conveniently, I have Eclipse already running, and I already opened it to the particular path that I want. So I just want to replace an object here on my local code that I have for the project that I'm working in. So I'm dropping it in, and then I need to commit these changes. For this hypothetical example that I'm using, we're using a Subversion app repository. So I just committed the changes from my local machine into the Subversion app repository. Now this could have been code instead of an image. I'm using it as an example. Now what I need to do next is I need the server itself to be updated. I need to fetch again that new code. So by switching over to the scripts tab and looking at operational scripts, I can easily run this web app subversion code checkout. Instead of me having to SSH in, I just click on it, and it's actually executing as we see in the events list of the panel. So think about the difference of having to SSH into a machine, maybe make a typo or a mistake, or being able to encode all your procedural steps as operational scripts. Not only are you standardizing on things, you're cutting down on mistakes, and you're also basically encoding your best practices approach on exactly how you do things. And it could be a whole variety, anything that you could do directly in a server, you can automate with scripts, and you can make it a lot easier. So we notice here that the script is not completed. I want to come back to the demo application that I've been running, and when I refresh the page in a moment, you're going to see that this object is now going to change to the RightScale logo that I put in there. And I click refresh, and there we go. So just as straightforward, we can have a whole team working on different applications. Now, I've been using a very simple one here. I want to show you how there's actually access to lots of different pre-configured objects. What I want to show you is how I have under my library here, I have macros, which is how I access all these different pre-configured assets. So what I'm showing you here is that we have the ability, by running any one of these macros, as you saw me doing a moment ago, to stand up either a single all-in-one or a three-tier architecture of PHP, of Ruby, of Java, and then we have our partners, as you heard him speaking on this demo. So if I want to stand up an environment with, say, WebSphere Community Edition, instead of me having to do all the legwork, I can stand up either an all-in-one server with WebSphere CE and DB2 or a three-tier architecture of that application combination. And the same thing goes for Zend PHP. I can very easily deploy those. And it's even more interesting in that. So you have a leg up with the pre-configured assets. But usually people need to tweak and modify things to really get them to where they need them to be. So I'm going to show you how, let me see, am I looking at the right one? So I'm going to drill back down into the machine that I was using for the example, and this time I'm going to show you a little bit of the details of how that server template happens. It's the tab here that I'm clicking on called the scripts. So these are all the scripts that execute at boot time that are installing and configuring things. So this is the web app S3 code checkout. So I can easily change the order that they boot in. I can delete something, or if I want to modify a script itself, I can click here on the little magnifying glass, and I can see the text of the script, and I can modify it. Now, we all know that most companies now use code repositories to be able to keep track of those versions as they change. Well, think of the same concept, but for your scripts and your server templates. Notice how up here I have a revision system. So anytime I make a change to a script or even to a server template by adding or taking out scripts, I can commit that change, so I'm able to roll forwards and backwards in those changes and bring you that concept of agility as it was explained in the webinar before. So Betsy, I think that does it for the demo part, and let me give you the presentation back.
Okay, so I'm just going to sort of quickly remind you, the cloud providers provide the resources themselves, and what RightScale provides is the provisioning of those resources, maintaining the consistent environments. We have a huge library at this point of standard configurations of scripts, server templates, macros that you can leverage to get started. They can all be customized, and then we really run from dev and test all the way through to production, and your production teams can have a very powerful multi-cloud management system at the end of the cycle. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Leon, and Leon's going to talk about IBM's addition to the solution pack.
Thank you, Betsy. I just, sorry, wait, I have a bit of an echo in here. I want to spend a few minutes talking about IBM, and maybe IBM that most of you are not familiar with.
Leon, Leon, I think you have, you need to mute your computer.
Thank you.
Ah, there you come. Okay.
So the well, it's still doing it.
You know, maybe we should go on to Zend,
And we'll
Kent,
come back,
and then
yeah.
we'll come back to you, Leon. So let's go on. I'm just going to flip through these. You guys will get a preview of what Leon's going to say. And Kent, let's have you talk about Zend here for a little while, and we'll fix Leon's audio.
Okay, sure. So earlier in the presentation, we talked about full lifecycle support, and that's sort of the ability to start out in development and then run it all the way through production. And that's sort of the same message that Zend says when we talk about support for PHP. So on the development and test side, we have Zend Studio, which is our IDE. We have Zend Server, which is our runtime environment. It's used in development as well as in production. And Zend Framework, which is a SDK for cloud and application services. And so talking a little bit about this and sort of going from the left to the right here, Zend Studio is a full-featured PHP IDE. It actually has cloud services support. Because it's built on Eclipse, you can pull in various things like various plugins like for Amazon or for various other cloud offerings. We have built integration into the product to allow it to work directly with remote systems and deploy applications to those remote systems in development. We've built in an integration to VMware Workstation, which allows people to work on their desktop. And there's various kinds of things in Studio that help people work with these cloud infrastructures. I think over time you'll see more and more integration between Zend Studio and RightScale technology to the point where a developer will be able to be in Zend Studio and say, hey, I want to launch one of these test and dev templates in RightScale, just do it for me. And so without ever leaving the developer cockpit, they're sort of ready to go. Zend Framework gives the person the sort of standardized framework for building their PHP applications. Now, you can use any framework you want. You don't have to use Zend Framework. But some of the nice things that are in Zend Framework that are related to what we're talking about today is there's something called the Simple Cloud API. This is an API that allows applications to do operations on cloud infrastructure services and various other things that that are needed, in an application in the cloud. Can we go back one slide? Somebody bumped us forward a slide here. So these are the kinds of services in Zend Server. And then as you move on down the road and you move towards formal QA, load testing, and ultimately into production, then you have Zend Server still, but we bring in Zend Server Cluster Manager. And the kinds of things that Zend Server brings to the table that are important for this lifecycle is the provisioning and auto-scaling support. So you can basically take applications, you can provision them up, you can auto-scale them. RightScale, it's a good example of using that. It's also application-aware monitoring. So when you're running your system, it will actually be monitoring at the PHP level and let you know the kinds of things that are going on in your code and be able to really get detailed information about where problems are happening and exactly where applications are slow. You have the automatic support for clustering, so all of the monitoring data is centralized, all of the management of the cluster is centralized, fault-tolerant failover of sessions. So if you're using sessions to manage something like a shopping cart and one of the servers happens to fail, it'll automatically fail over to one of the other servers and not lose the session for the user. One last thing that's really important for a lot of customers is asynchronous job execution. So PHP by itself is sort of takes in a response and sends back or takes in a request, sends back a response. But a lot of times you need to separate jobs into two pieces. Like you might want to process the person's order and then later on send them shipping information. And so part of Zend Server is an ability to queue these jobs up to execute asynchronously and manage that whole life cycle. So now if we can go to the next slide, please. So if we look at Zend and the cloud in general, what we've got on one side is development support with Zend Studio, the debugging, the testing, and so forth. On the production side, you've got the management with Zend Server, and the simple cloud APIs sort of tie this whole thing together. And we work with RightScale and Amazon and various other sort of cloud technologies. So in general, we're providing this pretty broad ecosystem for PHP that spans everything from an individual developer desktop to sort of cloud deployments. And now, hopefully, we have Leon back and not echoing, and we can turn it back over to IBM.
Okay, Leon?
Yeah, I'm back, and I hope this time around I'm all right. So if you could back up to slide number 17, thank you. So I'm here to speak for IBM, and it may be the IBM that many of you are not familiar with. So most people are familiar with IBM as a provider and manufacturer of computing systems, storage, and so on. We also happen to be the the leading provider of something we call middleware. And middleware includes things like web servers, application servers, database servers, messaging and queuing systems, process servers, portals, and so on. Basically, all of the types of the components that you use to connect your applications to the IT infrastructure. At the core, at the foundation of our middleware stack are really two products. One is the WebSphere application server, or we sometimes call it WAS, and the other one is the IBM database system called IBM DB2. So this is exactly the stack that we are providing in partnership with RightScale as part of the developer and test solution pack. Next chart, please. When we talk about development and test, while it is a leading use case for the cloud, we sometimes encounter vastly different ideas that people have of what they want to do. Many of our customers are looking to deploy applications in the cloud, but they happen to be building them in-house. On the other hand, there are people who have bought into the cloud completely and have gone into the build on the cloud, deploy in the cloud. So the production is in the cloud as well as all of the development and test is in the cloud as well. However, what we're finding is the majority of the customers and clients we deal with are falling into the first bullet category that we have on the charts in here, which is they do want to continue to run their applications on premises because that's where they are deployed today. So it's in their own data centers servicing their own business users. But at the same time, they have this big desire to leverage systems on the cloud to specifically address the challenges that I was talking about before, which is this lack of sufficient capacity to accommodate development and test. So the use case that we see most often is build and test on the cloud, deploy on premises. So next chart, please. To support this use case and the other use cases, we are providing, as I said, our products, which is WebSphere, Application Server, Community Edition, and DB2 Express C, which also stands for Community Edition, as part of the RightScale solution pack for the test. And I want to make sure that I come across very clearly that while these are Community Edition products and they are available for free at no charge, these are by no means crippleware. These products are full-function products, and I'll specifically address the case of DB2. It is a product that has all of the same capabilities of our larger and higher value DB2 editions, all the way up to the DB2 Advanced Enterprise Edition. They're using exactly the same code base. The difference in there is which license gets enabled. So you're practically not able to develop an application on DB2 Express C that would not work on the higher value edition. So every application you develop on DB2 Express C will work on the higher value editions. And when you're using DB2 Express C on RightScale, on the cloud, you're able to take advantage of all of the capabilities that we offer. One of them is a hybrid database engine that does both the relational as well as XML data management. It also includes the federation where you can have one database front and a number of other databases out there. It is running on the same Linux, Windows, Solaris systems that you will find maybe in your enterprise. You're able to use the same systems for development and test. It is available at no charge, and with that, you do not get a formal support from IBM, meaning you're not able to call a 1-800 toll-free number to get support from IBM. If that is what you need, we do provide, as it is common in the open source world, a subscription. So you can purchase a yearly subscription from IBM, and it'll cost you a little bit less than $2,000 per server per year. Or you can purchase a license outright for a one-time charge of a little bit less than $6,000, and you are now fully supported, and you actually have additional features. And if that is not sufficient, your scaled application demands more power and more resources, you're welcome to migrate to higher value editions such as Workgroup or the Enterprise Edition. And again, I cannot emphasize this enough, is you do not have access, you do not have to have access to source code, you do not have to change the source code. Your application will continue to work unchanged and taking full advantage of all the resources that you may have available. Next slide, please. This slide is an example of one of the partners we've worked with. It's a company called Retalon. They pride themselves on being able to help the world's largest retailers to optimize one of the key, or probably the key, performance indicator that everybody in retail measures, and that is the gross profit margin. Retalon wanted to branch out of being just a software provider and get into the business of being a software as a service provider to broaden their scope in the market or reach in the market. So we've partnered with them and provided our WebSphere and DB2 products, and RightScale provided their platform management capabilities to allow them to transition their business from software to software as a service. And they were able to do it in record time with what amounted to be an absolute minimal investment of resources in terms of hardware costs on their side. So that's a great example of how our partners are leveraging this entire ecosystem to move their business from being just a ISV to being a software as a service provider. And with that, I'd like to pass this back to you, Betsy.
Okay, great. So that ends our formal part of the presentation. We're going to do a live Q&A session. We've got piles of questions here to go through. But before we go there, if you're interested, we have a white paper and a whole site dedicated to, or a whole section of our site dedicated to development and test in the cloud. For the next, or for the rest of 2010, we have an introductory price where you can get half or a quarter, depending on which pack you take, off the monthly price for the next year. So we're just really excited about launching this and want to get a bunch of people using it so that we can get early feedback. And if you have any more questions, if you will email them to sales@RightScale, we really answer the questions. Someone will take those and send them to the Zend people or the IBM people, and make sure that we get your questions answered. So with that, I think we've got a great one for you, Leon, here, which is, does IBM just work with Java? The IBM, I guess the IBM stack that you're offering through the Dev and Test solution pack.
Yeah, thanks. So it is a good question, because what we have done in partnership with RightScale is created specific stacks for those who are using with Java language to develop their applications, and in there we've provided WebSphere application server, which is a Java J2EE 5 container, and DB2, which works quite well with Java applications. But we're not limited to Java at all.
We have also created a number of templates, I believe the count is about 5, on RightScale and placed them into the RightScale library. These templates allow people to use our DB2 database for building PHP applications, for building Ruby on Rails applications, Python applications, pretty much anything that you wish to do, .NET applications as well. So there is a, while the solution packs provide a very focused packaging and a solution for specifically for Java applications, our joint customers can definitely mix and match and use other programming languages with the templates we've published into the library. And I think Yuri had a URL for the library, which was rightscale.com/library, where those templates can be found.
Yeah, so you don't need to be an existing customer of RightScale. You don't need to be signed into a RightScale account. Anybody can publicly browse to that particular URL, rightscale.com/library, and see all the server templates that are there.
Great. Okay. So, Kent, do you want to address one of the Zend-related questions?
Yeah, one of the questions here was somebody was asking how does PHP scale in the cloud, and I think it's actually a really good question, because one of the things about PHP and the structure of the way a PHP server is set up is PHP servers are essentially, with the exception of session data, fairly stateless, which means that they can scale very easily just by adding more web servers. They sort of scale linearly. Even with Zend Server Cluster Manager collecting the data from all those servers and centralizing the deployment and some of the other monitoring data, it still scales, essentially linearly. So one of the great advantages of a PHP environment when you're talking about something like RightScale, where you can set up scalable arrays, is that as it scales up, you're going to basically see pretty flat, pretty linear growth as you add machines, which fits really nicely with the cloud models and scale up, scale down.
Perfect, perfect. So we have a RightScale one. Who are some of the cloud providers that RightScale works with? So we work with Amazon and Rackspace. We also work with private cloud technologies like Eucalyptus and Cloud.com. And there are a number of clouds coming out, one from our friends at IBM. There are other cloud technologies coming out of VMware. So most of the commercially available or soon to be available cloud technologies we will support with RightScale. Yuri, do you have?
I have a question here, and Leon, I'm going to ask you to help me a little bit here, because I think you'll be able to speak to this topic. It's how is software operating systems and database licenses managed in the cloud? Because Oracle became very expensive in a virtual environment, can we save that cost? So let me answer the first part of this question, and then I will ask Leon to help out with the second part. There's a lot of flexibility in how you approach things. In the case of the solution packs, which we have been using for the examples today, we actually have built into them all the costs. So some of those components are already open source, that you can use them in the solution pack, and things like Zend Server, which are not free, are actually rolled into the price. So if you signed up for one of the solution packs that are part of this demonstration, there's nothing additional that you have to pay there. Above and beyond that, there's several approaches for how people run different enterprise applications in the cloud. Sometimes you can buy perpetual license from that provider. Other times they require you to buy a registration key, which you can enter into the server templates. So there's actually quite a few different approaches and solutions depending on the exact company and the strategy that they choose to follow. Now, I asked Leon to participate because I happen to know that IBM has a really good alternative to Oracle that runs in the cloud, and I think that Leon can speak more to that.
Thanks, Yuri. So, as Yuri just said, that what we've provided RightScale with is our portfolio of products to include and make part of the solution pack for development and test, and have a cohesive delivery to all of you who are interested in that. In there, you are able to get our WebSphere application server Community Edition, as well as DB2 Express C product. And just as you would with open source products, you can use them free of charge. You can use them free of charge for development and test, but you can also use them free of charge for production. We do find that a lot of our customers who do use them in production are interested in getting proper support from IBM. So to address that, you actually can procure with proper support from IBM for both WebSphere CE as well as DB2 Express C, just like you would in the open source. So we're purchasing a yearly subscription. It's available for both of those products. Or, as I mentioned before, you can get a one-time charge license for DB2 at about $6,000 or higher value addition for a higher. Now, all of those are fully supported in virtualized environments that the cloud demands. So you are not going to get turned away because you're running in a cloud or in a virtualized environment, and you're not going to pay extra for that either. What we do offer for people who are interested in maybe they're dissatisfied with the Oracle is we do have a capability in DB2 to make it assume a personality of an Oracle server. And what that means is you're able to use with DB2 the Oracle flavor of SQL. So you're able to build, take your applications and very little change, make them run against DB2. I'm saying very little change is sometimes it can be no change at all, but that's very rare. There is typically maybe some change required, but that change is trivial in most cases. So you're able to now take your application, deploy it in the cloud, and have that run against DB2 and forego the charges that you may have found to be excessive with some of our competitors.
Perfect. Okay, Kent, are there questions that you'd like to answer?
Yeah, I mean, there's a question here about, basically moving beyond test and dev and into production, and how Zend Server would be handled from a pricing perspective in that kind of a situation as well. As we move out, we basically are as Leon described, under a subscription model, very much like an open source subscription, even though there's proprietary technology. And when we move to the cloud, I think we're going to follow basically the same kind of model that seems to be popular in the cloud, which is sort of an hourly usage number based on the actual usage. So as you scale up and scale down in the cloud, you're going to actually pay for the servers that you actually use. And then I guess on the other end of the extreme, from sort of a pay-as-you-go model, Zend does offer sort of an unlimited use model that for larger customers who are going to be putting up a private cloud inside their own data center or something like that, and they don't want to have to actually account for variable usage, we can actually allow customers to sort of buy an unlimited use license, and that'll allow them sort of unlimited usage in their private cloud. And that's, I think, something that a lot of the larger companies are looking for, because that gives them the flexibility of cloud usage with a fixed cost, which is a great option going forward.
Perfect. Okay, we got one here that I think Yuri might answer. Could you suggest some load testing tools?
Yes, we have a company that we partner with for this called SOSTA, and let me spell that for the people on the phone call. It's SOASTA, SOSTA, and we partner with them because you build these applications in the cloud, and then you actually want to put them through their paces before you go live with them. Not only do you do integration testing for all the logical and regression testing you might want to do, but you actually want to see if they scale in benchmark, not just a single machine, but whole environments to see how they behave. So SOSTA is able to create lots of virtual users that are originating from many different data centers around the world, so you can even check the routing that's going into your environments. You can create different virtual paths that they travel to your site, and they have all sorts of really interesting analytics that you can be monitoring real time as all these virtual users are visiting or even potentially hammering your site. So I'm not great at selling the product. I'm just describing it as I know it today. Now, I have another question here, and Leon, I'm going to ask you to help me answer this one, but it's actually two questions that are really related, so I'm going to read two questions, Leon, and then I'm going to ask you to talk about it a little bit. Does RightScale add consistency guarantee to data? As far as I know, traditional database management systems are not scalable on the cloud. How is RightScale going to help with that? And then the other related question here is, when you say that a database scales, are you talking of Oracle RAC for horizontal scaling?
Yeah, so on the first part is, can RightScale guarantee consistency of the data, or can IBM guarantee consistency of the data? So one of the aspects of the DB2 database that we provide is it guarantees transactional integrity of the data. So what we mean by that is, once a transaction is committed, we pride ourselves on the fact that we are ensuring that all of the data in the transaction is persistent and stored and is guaranteed to be there. Now, that's not a legal guarantee against failures of equipment, loss of disk and backups and so on. I don't believe anybody can provide that level of guarantee, or I don't believe anybody provides that level of guarantee. So the consistency of the data is something that DB2 database is well known for, and that there is transactional integrity that is built right into it. We do not have a non-transactional database engine in our product. On the second part of the question, I think it was about Oracle RAC and scalability. So scalability is a hotly debated topic in the cloud, specifically around relational databases and whether or not relational databases are the right technology for the cloud. Many people will argue that maybe the new paradigm of NoSQL databases, which have a relaxed data integrity rules, is but allow you to scale possibly to larger environments, are the right right technology to use. My view on that is very simple. Relational technology has been used since 1970s. We have basically all of the world's applications are running on that technology. Unless we want to go recode all of that, use NoSQL right now to get on the cloud, I don't think that that's where the road we're gonna follow. That's not to say that there is not a place for that technology. It's just we need to be pragmatic and practical around what the road ahead is for us to take existing applications and put them on the cloud. One of the ways that people deal in the on-premises deployments with scalability is to try to scale out horizontally and build database clusters horizontally. Oracle has a technology called Oracle RAC. IBM has a somewhat similar technology. We believe it's a better technology called PureScale, and that technology allows you to build these clusters. Unfortunately, Oracle RAC is not deployable to cloud simply because building clusters, RAC clusters, requires access to shared disk, and there is no such thing as a shared storage on the cloud. Every instance on Amazon gets can only be attached to to their own storage. So that's we do have a team in here which is called the Information Management Cloud Computing Center of Competence, and we do help people achieve their scalability objectives with our product. Scalability is something we built right into DB2 engine, and we're very much priding ourselves on our ability to meet the scalability challenges that people have.
So, Leon, if I could just add at the end there, we're very used to having this kind of discussion, so I want to encourage everybody in the webinar, if you have specifics you want to talk about, please reach out to us. You have contact info here for our partners. It could be scaling the database. It could be scaling the application server. Zend is rather excellent at that particular task. And in all these things, the devil's in the details. Exactly what do you want to do and what are the requirements? And we're always very happy to have those kind of discussions. And now looking at the clock, I see that we've gone slightly over the hour, so I'd like to wrap up the webinar. However, I'd like to let everybody asking the questions online know that we do get through all of them, and we respond to you online, and we email people back. So please, if you still have questions, you can continue submitting those to us, and you can always contact us for a discussion. So with that, thank you everybody for your time today. And by the way, if you have colleagues that were not able to participate today, this webinar was recorded and will be available probably by tomorrow in our website. It will be at rightscale.com/webinars with an S at the end for plural. Thank you, everybody.